Thank you very much, Bruce. Thanks for being with us, our guest. Art is exploding, considering new field of action. With the help of computers, the artist is changing her or his role. He may be a director, a planner, a designer, a provocateur of the machine sometimes. What do you think about this scenario?
Well, it has advantages and it has disadvantages. Like if when you have these digital means of production, suddenly you can do all kinds of different things using the same platform. But also, it's not clear what the goal is and kind of what the professional ladder is. I mean, it used to be you would start as a student and then you become an apprentice and then you become a journeyman and then you become an artist and then you become a curator and then you might meet some rich collectors and eventually you end up running the museum, right? Okay, when you can do anything at any time in any place, it's not clear what to do next, right? So you see a lot of rather confusing kind of efforts that are like very ingenious, but often don't seem to amount to very much, right? It's like it's very easy to kind of do things yourself, but it's harder to make an established career.
And the dialogue between art and technology is getting deeper and deeper now. Which are the main benefits that this discipline can give each other?
Well, I'm extremely interested in this, and I always have been, and I'm very sympathetic toward its limits, and I actually like the parts that don't make very much sense. But now that we have this pandemic, we have a very new social situation where basically all forms of culture are digitally mediated. Like you can't go to the gallery opening. You can't go to have a glass of wine somewhere. Events like Paratissima and Artissima are very difficult to have, and even digital events like Ars Electronica and Lens are now like spread online, and I find that disturbing. I mean, it used to be that there was like the art world and the electronic world, but now the whole art world has been shoved through the screen, and there's something traumatic about it because everything's electronic. But it also like harms people's feelings and like damages the society because we're living during a massive disaster.
And with AI and deep learning, it is changing also the idea of interacting with other kind of intelligence, also from the artistic point of view. Did you have the chance to reflect about the artistic possibilities given by these tools?
We have because in the last issue of Share Festival we received rather a lot of artificially intelligent artworks. And like you have to decide which are the good ones and which are the bad ones and which are the interesting ones and which are the boring ones. And it's new in some ways, but also like old in other ways. And it reminds me of the early days of digital video, where it was very difficult to do it at all. So if somebody sent you in something, it'd be like, wow, it's digital video, it's like, but that excuses a lot of bad artwork, right? So there's a lot of AI art showing up, and a lot of it tends to do the same kinds of tricks, which is like amazing the first time you see it, but by the 10th time you see it, it's kind of stale. I mean, it's dull, right? And it has, I mean, it's like a trick that's 5 or 6 years old, and it's gotten a little better, but it's not really spectacularly better. It's like a Windows 95 screensaver, right? I mean, if you saw the early screensavers, they were very artistic. It's like, it looks like Van Gogh. It looks like Mondrian. But, it isn't Van Gogh, and it isn't Mondrian. And, yeah, I mean, So the marvel goes away rather quickly. With that said, I'm extremely interested in neural nets. They're not artificial general intelligence. They're not real artificial intelligence. They're a different thing, and they're limited in what they can do, but they can do new things. They really have potential to do exciting and different stuff. And they're one of the most exciting things that's happened in technology art in the past 5 or 6 years.
And cross-media projects, artistic projects, are often the most intriguing in art. Which are the languages and the trends that you consider most promising in art?
Well, it used to be that if you had transmedia, you would have like analog media, digital media. So you'd like do a painting and then you'd like do the JPEG of the painting. But we're now, during the pandemic, there's kind of no trans left. I mean, it's all just smashed into digital, kind of violently, crushed. So it's like everything's thrown into a blender and you kind of push the button on high and everything's turned into a kind of transmedia soup. And that's actually kind of painful. I mean, like, if you want to be a good photographer and like do art photography, like doing transmedia art photography doesn't really help you very much. I mean, you're better off understanding things like focal length, exposures, things that photographers have been working on for 100 years. But when you think, okay, this is just some kind of plug and play component, suddenly all the interest is gone. It's just, it becomes, everything is flattened and kind of turned into a stew, and that's not good for the art world.
And anyhow, everything seems to be market driven, and somehow art and this expression too, which can be disruptive as a situation in which art and artists and their new ideas, their poetry, can prevail, can show themselves freely.
I know a lot of people who are in the art market world, and the art market world and the digital art world have traditionally been quite far apart because it's very difficult to sell or market digital art because you don't get unique works and you can't sort of sell them in the secondary art market. So I've seen people try to do this for a long time. But now when I talk to my friends in the gallery world or the market world, even though there's a lot of money in art, they're very upset because the normal methods of actually constructing the art market have fallen apart. Like, normally you would start a gallery, right? And then you would have artists you represented exclusively, and people would come off the street and they'd walk in, and you'd be the gallerist, and you'd say, "Madam, let me show you our new exciting young artist, and here are like 6 of his paintings," and maybe she buys one. But this is an old-fashioned retail market, right? I mean, it's like trying to sell shoes, right? And that kind of retail marketing is just collapsing everywhere. I mean, people can't go out to shop, and also they order things online, right? So, the ability to kind of launch new artists in a gallery has gone away. So it's not like the small place where they can start, right? Which is painful because, like, okay, if you're like a young artist from Cologne, on the French border of Germany, a nice town, right? It's like a lot of young artists come out of Cologne. You want to establish a local reputation first, right? I mean, you want to meet with your friends in Cologne, and you go to your cafe in Cologne, and you have like discussions, and you talk to your professor, and you talk to your gallerist, and you talk to the older guy who's like the established artist, right? And you learn a lot that way. Okay, if you're just on Amazon.com, who's going to help you, right? I mean, where's your network of people? And, suppose you're a regional artist, you want to, like, paint buildings in Cologne, right? Okay, that used to be a great way to earn a living because there are a lot of art people in Cologne, and they just really want to know, right? Like, there's a lot of regional Italian art, right? I mean, there are towns in Italy that are just famous for art production, and you do it locally, and the people locally are your friends, right? I mean, they're your patrons. They might be your relatives. Okay, and if the analog art market collapses, that support system is gone. Right?
And being a writer, you take care about words, in particular words that are able to properly describe and to synthesize new situations and trends. Which are the words that you recommend to better describe the present and the near future, possibly?
Well, I think we've got problems with aesthetics in digital art. Okay, if you've got generative art or augmented reality art or artificial intelligence art, how do you kind of come up with a vocabulary to describe what's good and what's bad, right? Or kinetic art or machine art or device art, and I'm very fond of those. Well, just take the example of an Alexander Calder mobile, right? Which is a work of kinetic art, right? It's like a cascade of levers invented in the 1920s. It's 100 years old. Okay, there's never been a good way to describe what a good Calder mobile looks like and which is a bad Calder mobile, right? It's like, okay, this one's pretty, and like that one's big, okay, right? Whereas if you talk about a ballet dancer, there's kind of like better methods. Like he's got very fine finish, very disciplined, or he's very expressive. You can talk about the movements of ballet as a ballet critic, but you can't talk about the movements of this Calder machine art in the same way, right? And and kinetic art is kind of famous for not having enough critics. Because it's like easy to build the machines, but it's not. It's hard to say which is the good one and which is the bad one. Right? Okay, if you're talking to a painter and you're a painting critic, you can say things to him like, I would work on the impasto. It's like learn how to let the oil dry and then paint over the oil, and then you can get certain things, right? Okay, there's like an established kind of vocabulary of what to tell a painter. Right? Or even what to tell a filmmaker. So you can work on the mise-en-scène, right? Or you need better set design, right? But if you're talking to a guy who's trying to build art machines, it's very difficult to tell him anything that he can sort of take home and think about.
And could we imagine the future of art if, for example, it will be more democratic and participated as a field of action, distributed all over the world, or it will necessarily involve more of our senses, or what else?
Well, there's a lot of art which really is very democratic and distributed all over the world, like street art is like that, right? So you think anybody can go out and commit vandalism? You break the law and you take out a stencil and so forth. So you think, okay, this is very easy, it's very cheap to do, it's not super fancy, so everybody's going to be equal. But that's not how it actually works. I mean, in the world of contemporary street art, there's sort of Banksy and everybody else. I mean, why is Banksy 1,000 times more famous than any other street artist, right? I know quite a few street artists in Torino, which has a rather lively street art scene. And there's 5 or 6 guys who are pretty good. And they probably could have been as famous as Banksy. Except how would you promote them? It's it's kind of a historic accident that Banksy has all the credibility in a situation that seems very democratic. So, I don't think that democracy really helps.
And I remember that the autobiography of the actress Simone Signoret was called "Nostalgia Isn't What It Used to Be."
Right.
In front of our current uncertainties, can we say that our future isn't what it used to be? How can we look straight in the eyes of the future? How can we prepare better our journey through it?
Well, that's quite an interesting question because, this has not been a happy century. Since 9/11 in the year 2000, there's been body blow after body blow. I mean, there's been a couple of economic depressions, a lot of terrorism, several wars, all kinds of austerity, growing anti-democratic repression, and now like anti-globalization and kind of like breakups of this, that, and the other. So, sometimes it just gets very bad, and what you need to understand there is like get some kind of historical awareness, right? I mean, it might be that the 1990s was like our Belle Epoque. And, we've had a series, I mean, the 1890s was a very interesting period. But then when the 20th century opened, after the First World War, there was just like a long, dark period. I mean, there was the war, there was between the wars, there was the Second World War, and it was just, really, it was just a sinister time. Maybe we'll have to wait for the 2050s to like come out of our difficulty. But having said that, the 1930s, although they were a very dark period, were a very rich artistic period. Like the 1930s in Paris, like Montparnasse, Montmartre, was probably the greatest physical gathering of great artists since the Renaissance. There was just tremendous stuff going on in Paris in that period. And it didn't end well. I mean, a lot of those guys were scattered to the winds by the Nazis. Paris was invaded, and their scene was tragic. But nevertheless, there were some. I mean, Cubism was invented there. There was just a ton of kind of very cool stuff going on. Super inventive, and still very much respected.
So we hope that art and beauty could save the world at last.
Well, I would just say that art is not necessarily something. I mean, great art doesn't happen during nice times. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Bruce. Thanks. Take care.
All right. Good
Ciao.
luck. Our best at Torino.
Ciao, grazie.